Welcome back to Saturday morning here on Money FM 89.3. Our international news review, Steve Okun. Wow, our Cubs baseball player dressed up for Halloween. Good morning, my friend.
Happy Halloween, celebrating our hometown, Glenn.
And first thing we got to talk about, let's go to ASEAN first. President Biden participated in the summit on the 26th, kind of the latest in a bunch of rebalancing efforts back toward Asia. What was the outcome of that summit?
Look, Burma out, Biden in. I mean, this was a really significant summit for both of those reasons. You know, first, ASEAN disinvited the Myanmar junta from attending. This is really the first time ASEAN's ever taken such a step, and that is because the military junta that has taken over the country has refused to engage with ASEAN on that 5-point consensus. So after the general was disinvited and no one showed, then you had others coming in like President Biden. So it was significant for both of those reasons. It was the first time in 4 years a U.S. president has participated in the ASEAN summit, and if nothing else, I think it shows that the U.S. is ready to engage directly back into ASEAN, as it really hasn't in the past 4 years under the Trump administration.
Which is wonderfully reassuring, Steve, because it's something we've touched on this show many times, the commitment to Southeast Asia. But what impact, another question we've asked before, what impact, if any, do you think Biden's reaffirmation of the region will have on the situation in Myanmar?
Well, I think it's really forced ASEAN to take a hard look and say that we've got to, move beyond, ASEAN centrality and non-interference when it comes to the tragedy that is happening in Myanmar. And, Cambodia, which is going to be the ASEAN chair next year, or now, I guess, now that the summit has ended, has said they are going to stick with this policy of not having Myanmar included in these types of leadership meetings unless they start to engage with the special envoy from ASEAN to address those problems. So, and that I think is in part because of what the United States is doing. Part of the U.S. and not just the U.S., but U.S., EU, and others, their insistence that the Myanmar situation be addressed by ASEAN within ASEAN. And now you see the U.S. pledging, over $100 million in new initiatives in expanding the U.S.-ASEAN partnership. You see President Biden saying he is going to be coming personally and can expect to be seen in person in the region, hopefully soon. So a lot happening on both fronts, and it's not a coincidence that these are moving simultaneously.
We just saw pictures this morning of the Myanmar government that had bombed a neighborhood in a western town in Myanmar. It was a very suburban-looking neighborhood, big houses, relatively speaking, and they destroyed some dozen or more homes there, big fires. And they were saying that was an area that subversives, insurgents were living in and attacking troops from. So this is as always, a complex and getting more complex situation in Myanmar, and it just doesn't seem like ASEAN can do anything about it, or is doing anything about it, is able to do anything about it.
Well, that's the question. It's finally taking some affirmative step, even if just not inviting the leader of the military junta to the meeting. And if Myanmar gets isolated within ASEAN, if it starts to feel not just political pressure, but starts to eventually feel financial pressure from increased sanctions or limits on foreign investment, you're seeing more and more companies pulling out of Myanmar, even though they're complying with the sanctions because they're not dealing with the military directly. It can make a difference. We've always tried to be an optimist, and it always hurts us when we think that way. But maybe this is starting to change it a bit.
Well, he went to the East Asia Summit on the very next day with Japan, India, Australia. And how was that a different discussion happening with those partners versus ASEAN?
Well, ASEAN, you have more direct engagement, like bringing in direct partnerships on health futures and COVID, in the climate and the like. Whereas East Asia is more of a forum that ASEAN has brought together to bring ASEAN is a central player when it comes to China and Japan and India in the United States. And so what the president announced at the East Asia Summit was that he was going to explore, the United States was going to explore with partners the development of an Indo-Pacific economic framework. Now, right now, that's just a soundbite because there is no economic framework without a trade strategy. And we still don't know what the U.S. trade strategy is when it comes to this part of the region. Is it going to pursue digital trade agreements? It would be much better, of course, if it came back to TPP. And so we don't know that yet, but at least it's a sign that the U.S. is engaging. It's taking the Indo-Pacific from beyond the military and strategic to the economic, and now we'll see how it gets fleshed out.
Looking at it from an optimistic standpoint, Steve, I see a key element in all these meetings. At the ASEAN meeting, there was 20.5 million given to tackle the climate crisis, part of this climate futures. Not a great amount, but maybe slightly tokenistic, but a move in the right direction. Decarbonization was discussed at East Asia Summit, which of course leads us to COP26 happening shortly. Where are we at now with the climate discussion with regards to President Biden?
Well, in terms of the United States, President Biden was hoping that the U.S. Congress would have passed what he calls his Build Back Better legislation, which would have given hundreds of billions of dollars funded in the United States towards climate, because the U.S. has to address its own climate policies as part of COP26. The bill didn't get passed, but finally, the Democrats are aligned. The progressives and the moderates have said, we're going to pass this bill. It's going to be $1.75 trillion. It's going to cover climate on one hand, and then families and children on the other hand. And over $500 billion of that is going to go to tackle the climate crisis, primarily through tax incentives to get businesses to invest, in renewables, wind, solar, electric vehicles, batteries, all of those types of things that are needed. So it's a significant bill. It would have been much better. No, I wouldn't say much better. It would have been better had it been passed and signed into law before COP26, but it's pretty clear it's going to get signed soon. And that's showing U.S. leadership.